She became the cowboy's wife to escape her father. He became her freedom. The town of Epsilon Outpost lay sprawled across a dusty plateau under the burning twin suns. Wooden structures mixed with metal panels jutted from the red soil, each building marking a story of survival in the harsh frontier. Traders, travelers, and farmers passed through the dusty streets, their boots kicking up small clouds that shimmered in the sunlight. Among them walked Leora Vance, her long hair tied back neatly, a small pack clutched tightly in her hands. She moved quickly, yet cautiously, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon. Leora had grown up in luxury, but that comfort came with chains. Her father, Garrick Vance, was a wealthy interstellar merchant, known for his sharp deals and sharper temper. From the moment she could understand, her life had been dictated by rules, contracts, and appearances. Every step she took was measured, every word carefully chosen. She had been raised to be an obedient daughter, a perfect representation of her father's empire. But deep down, Leora longed for freedom. Today, freedom seemed almost within her grasp, or at least she hoped it was. Her father had arranged yet another important meeting with a suitor, a man she had never met, and she knew this time it was different. He intended to marry her off to secure a deal that would expand his wealth and influence. The thought of spending her life as someone else's possession made her chest tighten. Leora had to escape. She ducked into the shadow of a cantina, pretending to be a customer, though her thoughts were elsewhere. Outside, the town buzzed with a rare excitement. A group of travelers had arrived in Epsilon Outpost. They were unlike anyone Leora had seen, rough, confident, and free. They called themselves cowboys, though they did not ride horses. They traveled the stars in ships that looked as untamed as the people themselves. They tamed wild worlds, facing dangers and challenges with nothing but courage, skill, and ingenuity. Among them was Captain Jerk Kane. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that looked weathered by both space and life, he carried himself with quiet authority. His eyes, a striking shade of green, scanned the town with a calculating gaze. He noticed everything: the broken signs, the flickering lights, the tense townsfolk. But when his gaze settled on Leora as she glanced nervously from the cantina window, he did not see a frightened heiress. He saw someone clever, someone who might belong in a world far different from her father's golden cage. Leora knew she had only one chance. As Jerk and his crew entered the town hall, preparing to register some supplies for their journey, she followed quietly. Her heart pounded. Every step felt like a drumbeat of possibility. When the doors of the hall opened to admit them, she stepped forward. "I need your help," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Jerk looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "And why would I help you, little lady? The galaxy is wide, and I don't usually rescue people from their fathers." "I'm not asking for rescue," Leora said, her voice firmer. "I'm asking for marriage." The words hung in the air like a sudden clap of thunder. Jerk blinked, uncertain if he had heard her correctly. "Marriage," he repeated, leaning back slightly. His eyes studied her, searching for jest or insanity. "You don't even know me, and yet you want to marry me to escape your father." "Yes," Leora replied without hesitation. "I can't stay under his control any longer. He will sell me if he gets the chance. I need freedom." You can give me that." The hall went quiet. A few townsfolk looked up in surprise, whispering among themselves. Jerk's crew exchanged confused glances, but Jerk himself did not look angry. Instead, a small smile tugged at his lips. It was the smile of a man who had seen boldness before and who respected it. "You're audacious," he said. "I'll give you that. Most people would just run or hide. You make a plan." "It's the only way," Leora said. "If I stay here, I lose myself." For a long moment, Jerk simply looked at her, weighing the situation. Finally, he said, "All right, we'll do it your way, but know this: I don't make promises lightly. Marriage is not just a signature, it's a partnership. If you're serious about freedom, you need to be ready for the life that comes with it. Space isn't forgiving." "I am," Leora said, and she meant it. By sunset, the documents were signed. The town's small courthouse had never seen such an unusual union. Leora Vance, heiress of a powerful family, became Mrs. Leora Kane, wife of a spacefaring cowboy, with little more than a signature and a determined heart as her protection. That night, Leora and Jerk walked out of Epsilon Outpost together. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and orange. Dust swirled around their boots as townsfolk peeked from windows and doorways, murmuring in awe and disbelief. Leora felt the weight of her chains lift slightly. For the first time, she felt the thrill of choice, the exhilaration of being her own person. The journey to the ship was quiet. Leora had expected fear, but she found herself strangely calm. Jerk broke the silence with a chuckle. "You're braver than most people I know," he said. "Or maybe just crazier. Either way, I like it." "You'll see," Leora replied with a small smile. "I can handle more than you think." The iron stallion waited beyond the outskirts of town, its metal hull reflecting the dying light. Jerk guided her aboard, explaining the controls in simple terms. Leora listened intently, absorbing every detail. Though she had never flown a ship before, she already imagined navigating the stars herself, steering away from the shadows of her past. As the engines roared to life, Epsilon Outpost shrank beneath them, becoming a collection of tiny specks in the vast desert. Leora pressed her hand against the cool metal of the cabin wall. The stars stretched infinitely ahead, and with them, a new life waiting to be claimed. The first few hours of space travel were rough. Turbulence rocked the iron stallion as it passed through debris fields, and Leora's stomach turned with the unfamiliar sensation of zero gravity. Jerk, ever calm, guided her through it with patient instructions and quiet reassurance. "You're doing fine," he said, noticing her struggle to float without bumping into walls. "It's all part of the learning curve. Humans are clever, though. I can tell you'll catch on fast." Leora smiled. The words gave her courage. In her father's world, intelligence had been measured in obedience and social grace. Here, it was measured in action, in the ability to adapt. She realized she had more of that than she had ever known. Night aboard the ship was silent except for the soft hum of engines. Leora stood by the viewport, watching distant stars streak past. She thought of her father, of the life she had left behind, and a strange warmth filled her chest. Freedom was not just a place, it was a feeling, a choice, and she had claimed it. Jerk joined her silently, leaning against the wall. "You did well today," he said. "Most people would have panicked. Most people would have stayed behind, not you." "I had to," Leora replied. "I couldn't live any other way." The night passed in quiet conversation. They talked about worlds beyond the frontier, about stars, planets, and the endless possibilities that awaited them. Leora discovered that Jerk was more than a rugged cowboy. He was clever, resourceful, and surprisingly insightful. For the first time, she felt the spark of partnership, someone who would not control her but who would face challenges beside her. By the time the twin suns rose on the next cycle, Leora realized she was no longer a girl escaping her father. She was a traveler, an adventurer, and a human capable of more than she had ever imagined. And though the galaxy was vast and dangerous, she knew one thing for certain. She had finally chosen her own path. As the iron stallion glided past asteroids and distant moons, Leora felt the first real stirrings of hope. Somewhere out there in the uncharted reaches of space, freedom awaited, and she was ready to meet it head-on. The stars stretched infinitely ahead, but Leora knew she was ready. She was no longer chained by her father, no longer defined by her past. She was Leora Kane now, and the universe was hers to explore. The iron stallion hummed steadily as it slipped through the black velvet of space. Leora Kane pressed her hands against the smooth metal wall of the cockpit, her green eyes wide with wonder. Outside, stars stretched in every direction, bright pinpoints of light that seemed close enough to touch. For the first time in her life, she felt the vastness of the universe surround her, free from the walls and rules that had trapped her. Captain Jerk Kane sat at the helm, his hands steady on the controls. He glanced at her occasionally, noting the mix of excitement and nervousness on her face. "Space can be beautiful," he said, his voice calm and low. "But it can also be dangerous. You need to stay alert." "I can handle it," Leora replied, though her voice wavered slightly. She knew she would need to learn quickly if she wanted to survive in this new life. The first challenge came sooner than expected. As the Iron Stallion approached a cluster of asteroids, warning lights began to flash on the console. Jerk's brow furrowed. "We're entering a dense field. Most ships take hours to pass through safely. It's tricky, even for experienced pilots." Leora gripped the railing, her heart pounding. "What do we do?" Jerk gave her a brief, assessing look. "Watch me, then follow my lead. Humans are clever. Sometimes the cleverest solutions come from thinking differently, not just following instructions." He guided the ship through the field with precision, the Iron Stallion weaving between massive rocks that glinted in starlight. Leora leaned forward, noticing patterns in the movements of the asteroids. She remembered her father's lectures about strategy, logic, and observation, lessons she had once hated but now realized could save her life. "Here," she shouted, pointing to a narrow opening between two massive asteroids. "We can slip through there. If we turn just slightly, we'll avoid the bigger ones." Jerk's eyes widened for the briefest moment. Then he smiled. "Good thinking." He adjusted the controls just as she suggested, and the Iron Stallion passed safely through the gap. "That was amazing," Leora whispered, her heart still racing. Jerk shook his head, smiling. "No, that was human ingenuity. Machines might calculate, but they can't think like us. You've got the edge." Leora's cheeks flushed with pride. For the first time, she realized that being human wasn't a weakness, it could be a strength. Her quick thinking had saved them from danger, and Jerk had acknowledged it. After passing the asteroid field, the ship leveled out into open space. Leora sank into a seat, her mind still buzzing with adrenaline. Jerk glanced at her. "You're learning fast. I've seen people with years of experience make mistakes in fields like that. You didn't just survive. You helped us succeed." She smiled, a small spark of confidence lighting inside her. "I guess all those years of trying not to disappoint my father, it actually taught me something." Jerk chuckled. "Funny how life works. What you thought was a prison turned out to be practice for the real adventure." Their journey continued through the quiet vastness of space. Days passed, marked only by the hum of engines and the occasional distant star. Leora learned to navigate, to read the ship's instruments, and to anticipate potential dangers. She discovered that space travel required patience, observation, and imagination, all qualities she had possessed but never been allowed to use freely. On the third day, they received an unexpected signal. A small transport ship had been stranded near a rogue planet and its crew sent out a distress call. Jerk frowned. "It's risky. The planet has unstable gravity fields. Most ships avoid it." Leora's eyes lit up. "We can help them, right? If we plan carefully, we could get there safely." Jerk studied her for a moment, then he nodded. "You're right. Humans see opportunities where others see only risk. Let's do it." They adjusted the Iron Stallion's course and approached the rogue planet. Its surface was jagged, dotted with craters and jagged cliffs, with swirling storms that made navigation tricky. Leora's hands trembled slightly as she monitored the instruments, but she stayed focused, following Jerk's instructions and adding her own observations. As they descended toward the planet, the stranded ship came into view, clinging precariously to a rocky ridge. Its hull was scratched and dented, and small sparks danced along its surface. "They're lucky we came when we did," Leora said quietly. Jerk's eyes narrowed. "Luck favors the prepared, and humans are always prepared to think differently." With careful adjustments, they guided the Iron Stallion close to the stranded vessel. Leora spotted a small breach in its hull that could collapse under stress. We need to stabilize it first. If we get too close, it might break apart. Jerk nodded. Do it. Using a combination of the ship's mechanical arms and Leora's quick planning, they anchored the stranded ship and reinforced its hull. It was a delicate process, requiring timing, observation, and trust in each other. Leora felt a surge of pride as they worked together. She was no longer just a passenger. She was an active participant in the mission, capable of making real decisions. When the stranded crew finally boarded the Iron Stallion, they were grateful beyond words. Leora felt a warm satisfaction watching their relief. "You saved us," one of them said. "How did you even think of that?" Leora smiled, shrugging. "We just looked at the problem differently." Jerk nodded approvingly. "That's humans for you. We see possibilities machines and rules often miss." As the Iron Stallion lifted off the planet, the rogue storm swirling below, Leora felt a deeper sense of confidence. This was the life she had chosen, dangerous, yes, but thrilling. And she was capable of it. She had chosen freedom, and now she had the skills to claim it. Over the next few days, Leora and Jerk traveled through sectors of space rarely visited by ordinary traders. They passed through quiet nebulae, glittering asteroid belts, and abandoned space stations. Leora learned to handle emergencies, think quickly, and trust her instincts. Every success built her confidence, every challenge strengthened her resolve. One night, as the Iron Stallion glided through a quiet star field, Leora and Jerk shared a rare moment of quiet conversation. They talked about home, about dreams, and about what freedom really meant. "You've changed a lot in just a few days," Jerk observed. "When we left Epsilon Outpost, you were nervous and cautious. Now you're different." "I had to change," Leora said softly. "I can't go back to who I was. I wouldn't survive there anymore." Jerk nodded. "Humans always adapt. That's what makes us special. We can take any situation and find a way to thrive. You're proving that every step of the way." Leora felt warmth at his words. She had been taught that she was fragile, that her intelligence and courage had limits. But Jerk, a man who had faced danger across the galaxy, recognized her strength. For the first time, she felt truly capable. Their journey was not without its small dangers. A malfunction in the ship's navigation system once sent them off course, and a minor solar flare forced them to take evasive action. But each challenge became a lesson, each obstacle an opportunity to grow. Leora learned to think like a pilot, like a strategist, like someone who could survive in the vast unknown. Through it all, her bond with Jerk deepened, not in a romantic way, but in the trust and respect that only shared challenges can create. They became a team, anticipating each other's actions and complementing each other's strengths. Leora realized that freedom was not just about leaving her father. It was about finding a partnership where she could thrive as herself. By the end of the week, the Iron Stallion entered a new sector of space, marked by strange, glittering planets and mysterious space debris. Leora leaned against the viewport, watching the universe unfold before her. She no longer felt like a girl trapped by her father's rules. She was a traveler and adventurer, a human capable of adapting, thinking, and surviving. "Where to next?" she asked Jerk, a spark of excitement in her voice. Jerk smiled. "Anywhere we want. The galaxy is full of challenges and opportunities. And I have a feeling you're ready for all of them." Leora's heart swelled with a sense of purpose. She had escaped her past, claimed her freedom, and discovered her strength. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, she knew that the universe was a place where humans could shine, through courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding desire to live free. The Iron Stallion continued its flight, cutting through the infinite darkness, carrying two travelers who were no longer bound by fear or expectation. Leora Kane had left her father behind, but she had gained something far greater: the chance to shape her destiny in a galaxy that would test, challenge, and ultimately celebrate her humanity. and for the first time, she felt that freedom was truly hers. The iron stallion glided silently through space, leaving the familiar paths behind and entering a sector that few dared to explore. Planets here were wild and untamed, with no law to govern them, no trade guilds to ensure safety. Jerk Kane navigated with care, knowing that even a small mistake could turn their freedom into disaster. Leora, sitting beside him, felt a thrill that both excited and challenged her. This was not a place for the timid. This was the frontier, and she had chosen to face it head-on. "Look at that one," Jerk said, pointing toward a planet with jagged green mountains and swirling purple clouds. "Vorak Prime. Harsh weather, wild terrain, and barely anyone lives there. Perfect for people like us." Leora leaned closer to the viewport. The planet was beautiful in a fierce, dangerous way. Lightning arced across its skies, and vast rivers of shimmering liquid moved like molten silver across its surface. "It's incredible," she whispered, "but it looks impossible to survive." "Exactly," Jerk said with a grin. "That's why it's perfect. Anyone who wants comfort or safety won't last here, but humans, we thrive on challenges. We adapt. That's the human edge." As they descended through the atmosphere, turbulence shook the ship. Leora held onto the railing, her stomach fluttering. "How do you stay so calm?" she asked, her voice almost lost under the roar of the engines. "Experience," Jerk said simply. "But also understanding that fear is a tool, not an enemy. If you can control it, you can think clearly, and thinking clearly is what keeps you alive." Leora nodded. She remembered the asteroid field back near Epsilon Outpost. Her quick thinking had helped them survive. She realized that Jerk's calm was not magic, it was training, but also trust in human adaptability. The landing was rough, bouncing over rocky ridges and jagged cliffs, but the iron stallion touched down without major damage. The air outside was thick and humid, carrying a strange mix of metallic and earthy scents. Leora stepped out carefully, feeling the planet's strange gravity tug at her feet. "This is going to be interesting," she said, glancing at the wild terrain. "Interesting is one word for it," Jerk replied. "Dangerous is another, but you'll learn fast. The key here is observation. Study your surroundings. Anticipate what could happen." They set up a temporary camp near a clearing, using portable shields and sensors to monitor the area. Leora unpacked supplies and watched the strange wildlife moving cautiously at the edges of the forest. Small, agile creatures with bright scales darted through the underbrush, while larger, slower beasts moved methodically along riverbeds. Everything seemed alive, alert, and unpredictable. "See those creatures?" Jerk asked. "Nothing here is easy to predict. You can't fight them all, but you can learn patterns. That's how humans survive. Observation, patience, and ingenuity. Always look for solutions, not just problems." Leora nodded, feeling the truth of his words. Her father had always taught her to obey rules, follow instructions, and stay within boundaries. Here, there were no rules. There was no safety net. Every choice mattered. Every decision could be life or death, and she was ready to face it. The first test came unexpectedly. While exploring a narrow canyon to survey the area, they discovered an old mining facility, abandoned but partially intact. Its walls were cracked and the equipment was rusted, but it seemed functional in parts. "Looks like someone left in a hurry," Jerk said. He ran his hand along a control panel, testing its responsiveness. "This could be useful. Shelter, resources, maybe even tech we can repair." Leora's eyes lit up. "We could fix it, make it our base. We just need to be careful and plan properly." Over the next 2 days, they worked together to restore the facility. Jerk guided the mechanical repairs, while Leora managed logistics, using her sharp mind to repurpose old machinery and optimize resources. She discovered that she had a knack for problem-solving under pressure. When a generator failed, she quickly calculated a workaround using spare parts. When sensors malfunctioned, she rigged temporary replacements with scraps from the storage room. Not bad for a beginner, Jerk said, watching her improvise a makeshift system. You're thinking like a human should, using what's available, adapting, surviving. That's the human edge, Leora smiled. Praise from Jerk was different from her father's empty compliments. Here, her intelligence and courage had real value. Here, she mattered. Their success was short-lived. On the third night, the sensors detected movement near the perimeter. A group of scavengers had found the facility, drawn by the lights and activity. Leora's heart raced. Jerk's hand rested lightly on a control panel, ready to activate defensive measures. "Stay calm," Jerk whispered. "We don't need to fight. Humans are clever. We'll outsmart them." Leora took a deep breath, scanning the terrain. The scavengers were cautious, sticking to the shadows, trying to approach unnoticed. She remembered the lessons from the asteroid field and the rogue planet rescue, thinking ahead, observing, improvising. "I have an idea," she said. "If we move these lights over here, we can make them think the facility is empty on this side. Then we can block the path with barriers we rig from the old equipment. They won't expect it." Jerk raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead. Let's see what you've got." Working quickly, Leora shifted lights, repositioned sensors, and rigged simple mechanical barriers. When the scavengers reached the area, they froze, confused by the unexpected layout and the false signals. Jerk's system quietly locked the facility doors. The scavengers gave up after a few tense minutes and retreated into the shadows. "Impressive," Jerk said once the danger had passed. "You've got instincts, cleverness, and courage. Most people wouldn't have thought of that." Leora felt a swell of pride. She had not just survived. She had solved a problem in a way that ensured safety without confrontation. She was learning the most important lesson about the frontier. Strength was not always in weapons or machines. It was in the mind, in the ability to think differently, to adapt, to act when others froze. Over the next week, they explored Vorak Prime cautiously. Leora learned to navigate the difficult terrain, identify edible plants, and recognize signs of danger. She observed the local wildlife and began predicting their behavior, noticing subtle patterns that gave them an advantage. Every day was a lesson in ingenuity and patience, a test of human adaptability. One afternoon, while walking along a cliffside, Leora spotted unusual tracks. They were large, with sharp impressions in the soil. "Jerk, look at these," she said. "They're not normal. Something big has passed this way recently." Jerk crouched to inspect them. "Good eye. Most people wouldn't notice these until too late. That's human perception for you. Spotting patterns, connecting dots, things machines might miss." They followed the tracks carefully, noting their direction and estimating the size and speed of the creature. It led them to a small valley where a herd of massive, gentle-looking animals grazed. Leora watched, fascinated. Even in this wild, dangerous world, there was life. And humans, she realized, could learn to live alongside it if they paid attention, adapted, and respected their surroundings. That evening, back at the facility, Leora and Jerk sat outside under the planet's purple-hued sky. The twin moons reflected off the rivers in the valley below, creating a surreal, calming glow. "You've grown a lot in just a few days," Jerk said quietly. "You've learned to observe, plan, and act under pressure. You've faced challenges I thought would overwhelm most people. You're learning what it means to be human in this frontier." "I feel alive," Leora said. "I've never felt this way before. Back home, I was always trapped. Here, I'm making choices. I'm learning. I'm me." "That's the human edge," Jerk said. "We take challenges, dangers, and uncertainty, and we turn them into opportunities. You're proving that every day, not just surviving, but thriving." As the stars twinkled overhead, Leora realized that freedom was more than escaping her father. Freedom was using her mind, her courage, and her ingenuity to shape her life, to create solutions, and to face the unknown without fear. Here, on this wild planet, she was no longer a girl hiding from control. She was a human capable of remarkable things. And as the night deepened, Leora knew this was only the beginning. Vorak Prime was just the first true test of her skills, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and often dangerous, but it was also full of possibilities. And humans, with their cleverness, courage, and adaptability, could meet any challenge. Leora Kane, once a girl trapped by rules and expectations, was now a pioneer. She had discovered the power of her own mind, the thrill of ingenuity, and the strength of human adaptability. And as she drifted into a restful sleep under the alien sky, she knew that the universe was a place where humans could shine, through thought, courage, and the unyielding desire to survive and thrive. The morning on Vorak Prime began with a strange stillness. The purple sky was clear and the twin moons had faded, leaving behind a pale glow over the rocky land. Leora Kane stepped outside the old mining facility and breathed in the heavy air. She had learned to read this planet, and something felt different today. Too quiet, too calm. Jerk Kane noticed it too. He adjusted the sensors and frowned slightly. When a place like this goes silent, he said, it usually means something is watching. Leora nodded. She no longer felt fear the way she once had. Instead, her mind started working, looking for patterns and possibilities. The scanners aren't picking up wildlife movement, she said. That's unusual. Good observation, Jerk replied. That means either the animals moved away or something bigger scared them off. They didn't have to wait long to find out. A transmission crackled through the facility's old communication system. The signal was weak but clear enough to understand. It was a corporate broadcast code, one Leora recognized instantly. Her heart tightened. "It's my father," she said softly. Jerk turned to her, his expression serious but calm. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Leora replied. "That frequency is used only by his network. He must have traced us." The message repeated, cold and formal. It demanded that Leora return to her family and stated that her unauthorized departure had caused legal and financial trouble. There was no anger in the message, only control. Leora clenched her hands. For a moment, the weight of her past threatened to return. But then she straightened her back. "I won't go back," she said. "Not now, not ever." Jerk nodded. "Good, then we think. We don't react. That's how humans win." They reviewed the situation carefully. No threats, no attack, just pressure. Her father was using words, influence, and systems instead of force. It was a different kind of challenge, one that required patience and intelligence. "He wants you to feel cornered," Jerk said. "If you panic, you lose." Leora took a deep breath. "Then we won't panic. We'll outthink him." Over the next few days, they noticed more signs of corporate reach. Trade signals avoided their location. Navigation beacons nearby went offline. It was subtle but clear. Her father wasn't trying to capture her. He was trying to isolate her, to make survival difficult enough that she would surrender. "He's cutting us off," Leora said one evening as she reviewed the data. "No trade ships, no information relays. He thinks we'll run out of options." Jerk smiled slightly. "That's where he's wrong. Humans don't need perfect systems. We build new ones." They decided to leave Vorak Prime before the situation tightened further, but instead of running blindly, they planned carefully. Leora studied old star maps and abandoned routes. She noticed something interesting. "These old paths," she said, pointing at a faded chart. "They were used before modern navigation systems. No corporate tracking, no live beacons." Jerk's eyes lit up. "Old human routes, forgotten because they're inefficient." "But still usable," Leora added, "if you know how to think around the problems." That night they prepared the Iron Stallion for departure. Leora worked beside Jerk, checking systems, adjusting settings, and planning contingencies. There was no panic between them, only trust. As they lifted off from Vorak Prime, the planet disappeared beneath them, but the lessons it had taught Leora stayed with her. She was no longer running. She was choosing. Their journey took them to a remote frontier colony called Haven's Reach. It was a small human settlement built from recycled materials and old ships. No corporations, no powerful rulers, just people surviving together. When the Iron Stallion landed, the colonists greeted them cautiously. Outsiders were rare here. Leora noticed something immediately. The colony worked not because of advanced technology but because of cooperation. People shared tasks, repaired tools together, and made decisions as a group. "These people remind me of you," Leora said to Jerk. "They don't rely on systems. They rely on each other." "That's humanity at its best," Jerk replied. However, even here her father's influence followed. A corporate envoy arrived days later, offering the colony supplies in exchange for information about Leora. The offer was tempting. The colony struggled with resources. The council gathered to discuss it. Leora stood before them, her heart steady. "I won't lie to you," she said. "My father has power, but he only controls systems, not people. If you give me up, you might gain short-term help. But you'll lose something more important, your independence." The room was silent. One of the elders spoke. "Why should we trust you?" Leora met their gaze. "Because I chose freedom over comfort, and because humans survive best when we stand together, not when we bow to control." Jerk watched with quiet pride. Leora wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was standing on her own. The council refused the envoy's offer. That night, Leora sat with Jerk outside the colony, watching the stars. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Not of him, but of becoming small again." "You didn't," Jerk said. "You grew. You faced him without fear or anger. That takes strength." Leora smiled softly. "I learned that strength doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it means standing firm." The next challenge came quietly. The colony's water system began to fail. Old filters broke and no replacements were available. Without water, the colony wouldn't last long. Leora studied the system carefully. "The design is inefficient," she said, "but we can improve it." Working with the colonists, she redesigned the system using local materials and simple physics. She showed them how to collect moisture from the air, how to recycle water more effectively, and how to maintain the system without corporate parts. The colony survived because of human creativity, not advanced machines. Word spread quickly. Other small settlements began sending messages, asking for advice and help. Leora responded to each one patiently, sharing knowledge freely. Jerk watched it all unfold. "You've become something important," he said. "I'm just helping," Leora replied. "That's exactly why it matters," Jerk said. "Humans rise when we share knowledge, not hoard it." Eventually, the corporate pressure faded. Her father's influence couldn't compete with independent humans working together. Control systems failed where human cooperation thrived. One evening, as the Iron Stallion prepared to leave Haven's reach, Leora looked back at the colony. "I never thought escaping would lead to this." "Freedom often does," Jerk said. "It spreads." As they lifted off, Leora felt something settle inside her, not relief, but confidence. She had faced her past without violence, without fear, and without losing herself. She wasn't just free anymore. She was strong. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, her father finally understood something he never had before. Humans cannot be owned. The Iron Stallion glided smoothly through space, leaving Haven's reach behind. Leora Kane leaned against the viewport, her gaze fixed on the stars stretching endlessly ahead. She had traveled far, from the dusty streets of Epsilon Outpost to the wild landscapes of Vorak Prime, and finally to a small colony where humans had built a life without rules or rulers. She took a deep breath, feeling the hum of the ship under her hands. Freedom was no longer just an idea, it was real, tangible. It was the work she had done, the choices she had made, and the strength she had discovered in herself. She was no longer a girl running from her father's control. She was Leora Kane, human, capable, and ready to shape her own destiny. Jerk Kane sat at the helm, watching her quietly. "You've changed," he said softly. "The Leora who left Epsilon Outpost is not the same Leora who looks at these stars now." "I know," she replied with a small smile. "I've learned so much. About survival, about people, about myself." "That's what the frontier does," Jerk said. "It strips everything away until all you have left is your mind, your courage, and your choices. Humans shine brightest there." Leora looked at him, grateful for his guidance. He had taught her how to trust herself, how to think, how to see opportunities where others only saw danger. But it wasn't just Jerk's lessons. It was the people she had met along the way, the colonists, the travelers, even the strange creatures on Vorak Prime. They had all shown her that humans could adapt, cooperate, and thrive even in the harshest conditions. The Iron Stallion passed a cluster of glowing nebulae, painting the cabin in soft shades of purple and gold. Leora felt a spark of excitement. "Where should we go next?" she asked. Jerk smiled. "Anywhere we want. Anywhere that needs people willing to think, to work together to survive. There are worlds full of challenges and opportunities, and now we can choose them." Leora's heart lifted. This was the freedom she had dreamed of, the chance to explore, to help, to grow, and to live without chains. But she also knew that true freedom carried responsibility. It wasn't just about leaving her father behind. It was about using her abilities to make a difference in the universe. Their first stop was a planet called Aurora Vale, a place known for its floating crystal lakes and jagged mountain peaks. Settlements were scattered and disconnected, struggling to survive harsh weather and scarce resources. Leora and Jerk offered their help, combining knowledge, ingenuity, and experience. Leora observed the settlement carefully. Water distribution was inefficient, energy sources were unstable, and communication systems were outdated. She worked tirelessly with the locals, teaching them new ways to manage resources, improve efficiency, and repair old equipment. One day, while surveying a lake filled with floating crystals, Leora noticed something unusual. The crystals seemed to respond to sunlight differently depending on the time of day. She suggested adjusting the placement of solar collectors around the settlement to take advantage of this natural energy source. The result was immediate. Power stabilized, and the community had enough energy for lighting, cooking, and communication. Jerk watched with admiration. "You think about problems differently. That's what makes humans remarkable, not just strength or tools, but creativity and insight." Leora smiled. She had come to understand that this was the essence of freedom, not escaping danger, but learning, observing, and acting with intelligence and courage. Humans had an edge no system or machine could match: the ability to adapt, solve problems, and inspire others to do the same. Over the following weeks, Leora and Jerk traveled to several other struggling colonies. Everywhere they went, Leora's influence spread. She shared her knowledge of resource management, navigation, and problem-solving. She taught colonists how to work together, how to trust their instincts, and how to approach challenges creatively. People began to notice. Word of Leora Kane, the clever young woman who helped settlements thrive, reached even the farthest corners of the frontier. She had become a symbol of what humans could achieve, not through wealth, power, or technology, but through courage, adaptability, and intelligence. Despite the distance, her father still attempted to reach her. Messages arrived demanding compliance, offering deals, and even trying to pressure her with threats. But Leora no longer felt fear. She read each message carefully, analyzed its intent, and decided her response strategically. She never reacted impulsively. She did not fight with anger or force. Instead, she outthought and outmaneuvered every attempt to control her. Jerk observed her quietly. "You've learned more than survival," he said one evening. "You've learned to master yourself and your choices. That's rare." Leora nodded. "I understand now. Freedom isn't just about leaving. It's about acting with purpose. And humans can do incredible things when they act together, when they think, and when they care." As the Iron Stallion traveled from system to system, Leora and Jerk continued their work, helping settlements establish independence, creating efficient systems, and teaching the value of observation, creativity, and cooperation. They became a team, not because of obligation, but because of mutual respect and trust. Every challenge they faced strengthened their partnership. One day, after stabilizing a settlement that had struggled for years, Leora stood on a cliff overlooking a valley bathed in the golden light of its twin suns. The people below waved at her and Jerk, smiling with gratitude. Leora felt a deep sense of fulfillment. "This is why I ran," she said quietly, "to find a life where I could do something meaningful, where I could make choices that mattered." Jerk stood beside her, watching the valley. "You've done more than escape. You've built. You've inspired. You've shown that humans can take challenges and turn them into opportunities. That's what the frontier needs, and the universe too." Leora realized then that her journey had changed her completely. She was no longer just a girl fleeing her father's control. She was a human capable of leading, teaching, and inspiring others. Her father had once believed that power came from control. She now knew that true power came from the human mind, the ability to think, to adapt, and to create. The Iron Stallion departed the valley, its engines quiet against the vast backdrop of space. Leora stood at the viewport, watching countless stars pass by. Each world was full of potential, worlds waiting for humans to explore, to solve problems, to grow. And she knew that humans would thrive, not because of machines or weapons, but because of ingenuity, courage, and heart. "Where next?" Jerk asked, breaking the quiet. Leora smiled, feeling the thrill of adventure once more. "Anywhere we are needed, anywhere we can help. There's a whole universe out there. Let's go find it." They traveled to deserts with towering dunes of metal sand, to frozen planets where ice storms raged, and to jungles with enormous trees that stretched beyond view. Everywhere they went, Leora applied what she had learned, observing patterns, creating solutions, and inspiring others to trust in their own skills. The frontier was harsh, unpredictable, and full of challenges, but it was also full of life, opportunity, and hope. Leora understood that humans had something unique, a spark that could not be controlled, tamed, or ignored. Their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability gave them an edge no obstacle could defeat. At night, aboard the Iron Stallion, Leora and Jerk would look out at the stars, reflecting on the journeys they had taken. Each challenge, each problem, and each solution had brought them closer together, not as master and student, but as partners in exploration and discovery. "Humans really are remarkable," Jerk said once. "Every time I think I've seen the limits, you prove me wrong. And every time you teach me," Leora replied. "I've learned more than I ever imagined, about survival, about problem-solving, about what it means to be human." The stars stretched endlessly before them, a reminder that the universe was vast and full of mysteries. But Leora felt no fear. She knew that with courage, intelligence, and determination, humans could face anything. And for the first time in her life, Leora Kane felt truly at home, not in a city, not under her father's control, not even on a planet. Her home was the vast frontier itself. Her freedom was the ability to choose, to act, and to make a difference. The Iron Stallion sailed through the infinite darkness, carrying two travelers who had learned, grown, and discovered the true meaning of human strength. Leora looked out at the horizon, her heart steady, her mind sharp, and her spirit free. The galaxy was vast and adventure awaited, but she was ready. She was not just surviving, she was thriving. She was human, brilliant, and unstoppable. Somewhere out there, new worlds awaited. And Leora Kane, once a girl trapped by her father's control, now a symbol of human ingenuity and courage, was ready to meet them all. The stars sparkled like never before, and the universe, wide and unpredictable, was hers to explore.